Welcome to Dawn of a Story. This is more than a podcast. It's a place where we speak the truth, tell the stories that shape us, and honor the moments that made us who we are. I created the space because I believe storytelling is how we connect, how we heal, and how we remember who we are. Some stories are still being written. Some are full of laughter. Some have changed everything, but all of them matter. Whether it's my story or one of my guests, my hope is that you hear something that resonates, that reminds you that you are not alone and encourages you to tell your story too. So settle in because every story starts somewhere, and this one starts now. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to Dawn of a Story. I'm your host, Dawn Pascal. I'm so very grateful you decided to spend your time with me and my guest this week, David Turetsky. Every show, we will be exploring a new theme, and this week's theme is stories behind the numbers. We talk a lot about numbers, metrics, data, analytics, but we don't always talk about the stories behind them, the decisions, the people, the moments that never show up on a spreadsheet. Today's conversation is about what happens when data meets humanity, when insight meets experience, and when the numbers finally start telling the truth about the people behind them. So let me tell you a little about my guest. David is a seasoned HR and compensation executive with more than 30 years experience leading HR technology, compensation design, and people analytics for complex organizations. A published author, patented compensation technologist, and host of the HR Data Labs podcast, David specializes in building scalable, data-driven HR systems that improve decision-making while keeping the human experience at the center of his work. So without further ado, let's get started. Hey, David, how are you?
Dawn, I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. This is such a blast from the past. Like, I cannot even tell you how long it's been since we last spoke.
And what's amazing is that you're one of the people that I have in my history, my long history of working in this world, who there, if you ask anyone for any of the people that know and love you, all they have is just these wonderful things to say about you. Because when we worked together, all I remember is that you were my person. You were the person
Aw,
that I could turn to always, and I never heard a no. I always heard a, "Sure, I'll be able to help you, but." And
right.
it was a and you and I had this love relationship because we both are data people,
Mhm.
and we love the data behind the people and the numbers behind the stories, and you got it too, and I love that about you. So,
Oh, thank you, David. Thank
my
you for that
pleasure.
beautiful recap. Thank you. Really. No, truly, thank you. And
It
and
it is
look,
my pleasure.
thanks. And look, I there's a reason why you stay connected with people, right?
Mm,
So even if it's we haven't spoken since our Bankers Trust Deutsche Bank days,
yes. Yeah,
that doesn't really make a difference because
yeah.
I mean, obviously, our listeners and our viewers don't know that we just had a whole conversation off camera, but
Yes.
we sort of just picked up the conversation as if we never stopped talking. So
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Thank you.
Yes. My pleasure.
When did you first realize that numbers carry stories about people and culture and leadership?
It's really fascinating. I went to school for architecture at Penn State. I'm a huge Penn Stater, and I got accepted into the architecture program, and I was really excited. I actually worked with an architect prior to going to college. I worked with an architect for a year, and I was so excited. I loved buildings, and I loved the measurements and the stories behind a building.
Mhm.
And then I got into architecture at Penn State, and I failed out in 5 weeks.
Wow.
5 weeks in, I got my first 5 credit F, 2 different courses, 5 credit F, and I carried that with me my entire career. Well, the next semester, I'd gone into the Division of Undergraduate Studies, which is basically a generic kind of holding pattern for
Mhm.
students. And the first class I took when I got in there was economics, Econ 101. And something happened, something magical happened. I sat in the class, I started reading the books, and all of a sudden, something got absorbed into my brain in the right way with the right teacher, with the right moment. And I was answering his questions before he finished asking them.
Wow.
And I was in a class of maybe 350 people, and I sat down front and I answered every single question, and people hated me for that. But one of the things that some of them recognized was he understands what's going on. And so
Mhm.
I actually started tutoring. In my first economics class, I started tutoring the class before the class was done, before I had actually even read the book, because I
Right,
understood the
right.
concept so well. And it just so happens that he was the honors advisor. And before I even finished, before I got the A, he said, "You're an economics student now."
Wow.
And he became my friend, and he's still my friend to this day. His name is Dr. David Shapiro. And from then, I just understood that the world of economics was more than just numbers. It was
Mhm.
more than just whether it's macro or micro, whether it's international versus, US. The world of economics is made up of people. And when I graduated from Penn State with a degree in econometrics, which is the study of the numbers behind the economics, I got into my first job. I got it 2 weeks out of Penn State, and that was with Towers Perrin. And
Wow.
I was doing the econometrics that I loved, actually scoring weighted job questionnaires, trying to replicate the Hay methodology of point factor evaluations. You couldn't have taken two things and met them in the middle so perfectly. And from the moment I got that job, I could explain to people what was happening, how knowledge, skills, and abilities, the measurement of them could lead you to creating an algorithm or to create an algorithm
Mhm.
that could measure the value of people in their work and the
Wow.
value of the job. That was it. I was a
Wow.
person from the beginning. And the passion that I was able to get out of that was from market pricings and from being able to talk to managers and employees to
Right.
cut through the baloney of there's a four-letter word in compensation. The four-letter word is more. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. I just
Right,
want more
right.
because I deserve it. So
I was
anyway,
gonna use a different one, but more is good too. Yeah.
yeah, but this is a clean podcast, so
Nah, it could be whatever you want it to
oh,
be, I
really?
don't care. I've just
I like
chosen
that.
not to, and I'm a big cursor. That's the interesting thing, and I have not cursed yet, so
Yes.
maybe this'll
Well,
be the one.
I
Let's go.
typically keep it clean on my podcast,
Okay. Okay.
so that's why I would never do that on someone else's without getting permission beforehand.
Yeah, no, you can. You can say whatever you want. It's fine.
Oh, I can?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. But Don, I think it goes back to we use a lot of words in HR and a lot of words in compensation that basically are meaningless to people outside of that.
Right.
And I think the people who have become good consultants and have become good practitioners in this world can bridge the gap between the HR and the non-HR by saying things in ways that people can get
Mhm.
and by making it non-HR. And so when I help companies design their incentive programs these days, I tell them, take all that language out that's just total BS to us or to them and
Right.
make it simple. Oh, but they're going to game the system. They're going to do whatever they can. No, 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 no. Treat them with respect. Build a system of trust into the program and tell them this is what we want you to earn and build discretion in. So if they do break that trust, you can, ding them for it.
Right. Right.
And that's how I love to teach people HR without the HR buzzwords is to get them back to simple and to get them back to trust. So,
Right. Wow. Okay. So what a blessing that you failed that course initially, right?
yes. And that person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you sort of, it opened up the doorway for you to step into where you were really supposed to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's a gift. Wow.
Mm. Yeah.
I could sit and I could sit here and think back to my 5-year-old self who always wanted to cook and bake. And I followed my parents as a good, child and followed the advice of my parents and went to pursue a finance degree at St.
Right.
John's University, and I did. And two courses sort of stick out in my mind if we can divert and talk about this for 2 seconds. One was public speaking. I took a public speaking class, and it was the best class
Yeah.
I ever took,
Yeah.
ever, because it so played beautifully to my nature of, chatty, and I've always
Yes.
been chatty my whole life, but also how to present yourself in a way where the message that you're trying to convey to those individuals is received by them. And that's multi-layered, and I don't want to go off on that tangent, but it played so beautifully into the storytelling piece that I've shared on the podcast before, which was something that my mom cultivated in me from a young girl. So that's number 1. Number 2, I took a data relationship class which taught me about relational databases
Mm.
and obviously all of the constructs behind that, and how you very simply, I'll give an example, like how to do a VLOOKUP. If
Yes.
you got the same column of fields in
Yeah.
one and in the same in the second spreadsheet, how you can pull data from both and so on. We're
Right.
not going to go down that rabbit hole of it, but again, spoke to me in such a way where it totally relates to how I process things and how my mind process things from an analytical standpoint. And then from there, I have used those tools. It did make a difference if I was in HR and HRIS and
Right.
operations and all the stuff that we did together throughout both of our careers, but even in helping me start my own business.
Yeah.
Just the fact that I could put together a process on how my wholesale customers were going to order, and
Right.
this went out first and then that went out, and then you fill out this and you fill out that, whatever.
Yeah.
It's sort of, yeah, it sort of defined so much for me going forward. It's
You
crazy.
never know how these tools can
Right.
be utilized unless you stop and you go, "Wait, wait, 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 I have a way of solving this."
Right.
And, it helps in so many different ways, not just in our professional or HR way. In other
Yeah.
ways, it just makes it so much easier. I have, little businesses that I've been doing off to the side for 20 something years, and one time it was I used to sell cell phones and cell phone pieces. I was one of the
Wow.
first T-Mobile sellers to actually get smart devices, PDAs, from Handspring, from Palm, from
Oh my God,
Samsung,
Mom, are
from
you kidding?
yeah, I
Wow.
sold the original Palms that came with radios in them, that came with cellular radios in them. And I used all of those skills to build a website, to have a
Yeah.
successful e-commerce business, and this was in 2003.
Wow.
And, I did it until my now ex-wife told me to get the heck out of it. So, I loved it though. Dawn, it
Yeah.
was because 'cause I'm a gadget guy. I love gadgets. I love new technologies, and I was at the precipice right there of
Hmm.
being able to transform what a smart device really was, from being a PDA, which was dumb and offline, to being something that we would keep in our pockets all the time, not just because we wanted to jot a note, but we wanted to look what's going on in the world.
Right.
It was transformational.
Wow.
So yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay. I'm trying to build the timeline. Let's talk about HR Data Labs and the business consulting that you do. And then we can kind of get into the road of where organizations go wrong. What came first, the consulting or HR Data Labs, or is it the same?
Well, so I've been consulting since my first job at Towers Perrin, right? So Towers Perrin, Watson Wyatt were my two first consulting gigs. And then I worked for Aon Consulting in the early 2000s after Bankers Trust,
Hmm.
because I created a company called Market Data Now that got acquired by Aon Consulting. So I've been doing consulting throughout my career. And to me, going back to your point before, consulting was a way for me to tell stories about how things interconnected.
Hmm.
I was also blessed within ADP, amazing company that it is. I was able to be the resource for compensation and talent management for ADP across all of ADP, big
Wow.
company. And
Yeah.
then one of the leaders there, Don Weinstein, took me under his wing, and I became their HR analytics and reporting guru and built their analytics platform called the ADP Data Cloud, which is being used by hundreds of thousands of companies across the world now. and it was fun. And so analytics, benchmarking, and reporting, that's our world, right, Don?
Yeah. Yeah.
We hear that and we go, "Yes, really?"
Yay.
But what I did was I built this product called analytics that people in HR were like, "We don't like analytics.
Mm.
It's foreign to us. We like getting dumps of tabular data and then playing with it in Excel." And I said, "But I could do all those things you do in Excel and just have it at the ready in case managers or employees need to see it, like, right now."
Mm.
And it took a long time for them to get it. And so what I did was I built a consulting company inside of ADP called the People Insights team. And that role, building that team gave me the opportunity to build a new consultancy around HR analytics. When I left ADP, I continued to do that work. And I was doing a lot of thought leadership that was very text heavy, but I wanted to talk to people. And so in October of 2020, I created HR Data Labs as a way of being able to talk to people about this new burgeoning area of, and it wasn't new at that point, it was like 5 years old, but started to talk to people. And the first thing I did was I talked to all my friends, but I started talking to people. I talked to CEOs, I talked to
Mhm.
analysts, I talked to practitioners, I talked to owners, I talked to a lot of different people. I got about 150 episodes in, and I'm like, wow, this is really taking off.
Wow.
Well, and at that point, I got acquired by salary.com and just kept it going. And it was wonderful. I could keep doing the HR Data Labs podcast inside that great company and had a lot of fun doing it. And then one of my colleagues who joined me on the Turetsky consulting side became my co host. And we just kept telling stories about not just HR data and analytics, but then it started transforming to being how can you tell stories that relate to other things about HR that people
Mhm.
can learn from. And so
Mm.
we created a story arc for every show. It was what's the problem? What can people do about it? How does it manifest? And then what can people after the show do to fix what they've got going on?
Right.
So
That's
it was,
amazing.
yeah, it was wonderful.
I mean, come on. Talk about the merging of all of your worlds together, right? If I can sort of summarize it in that
Yes.
way, that's super
Right.
cool.
Well, and one of the fun things was along the way, I had a marketing person that I hired at Turetsky Consulting, and she was brilliant. Her name is Carissa Harris. She is still brilliant, but she doesn't work with me anymore. That's why I say she was. She had an idea to create a cartoon that went alongside the podcast. So after every podcast, we would summarize it. And I built a relationship with a company called Delicine, and they did the design of the what I called the doodles. So I created
Okay.
HR data doodles. And so what I did was I started creating books called the HR data doodles, and I made this is the fifth season called HR versus the Hood. It's a mystery.
Okay.
It's a mystery series around HR. But and so in order to be able to reach out to other people who didn't like audio mediums or didn't like to necessarily read, now I have graphic novels that we could reach out to, and for those people who like reading comic books, they can read a story and get the story again with a nice story arc to it for each one of the seasons so that they could learn more about how HR can solve problems beyond just the business of HR, and be able to help the business itself.
Oh, come on. Are you this that's so that is just so stinking cool. I can't stand it. That's great.
And it's a lot of fun. And I actually just submitted season 6 to my editor, who's going to take it and put it into shape so I could send it to Amazon and Ingram Spark. I self-published this stuff. And then season 7, I just sent to the designers to start working on.
Oh, man, David, did you ever think if you can take a step back and just think, did you ever think you'd be doing all this?
No, never,
Okay.
never. But my mom says I have a face for radio. So I had a inkling that I would be doing something like this.
I
Yeah.
can't. All
Yeah. My
right.
mom's
So
old school Brooklyn. So there you go.
go Brooklyn. Woohoo. Okay.
Exactly.
So where do you think organizations go wrong?
So
I
one
know
of the fun,
that we could
yeah,
talk about that
a
probably for about
million
10
different
hours,
ways,
but
like we were talking about before. But one of the things that I like to think about when it comes to, and I'll just stick with HR data and analytics and things like that. They look for causality and they try and say that if I do something, it's caused by something.
Mhm.
When we know that there's correlative effects as well as causal effects, right? When you change the spending on a learning program, there's going to be causation there, right? I spent more, or I spent less. That's going to
Mhm.
cause things to happen, but it might just be correlative. It might just be that you hired the right people or that they already had the knowledge or whatever. So I think a lot of organizations tend to say, well, there's AI now and I can drop a whole bunch of middle management because AI is going to do that work. No, it's not. What's going to happen is that you're going to now put all that work that was happening by all those people onto other people's shoulders, or it just ain't getting done.
Right.
And the the causal nature of people is to then go find a tool that will help them. Maybe AI will help them in that way, but it may not. And so you're going to start
Right.
to see problems arise. You're going to start to see burnout happen. So I think what happens is that organizations tend to want to draw linkages where there may be just weak linkages between doing something and getting a result. And I see this happen all the time in HR data and analytics where they measure things, they make decisions, and then they try and say, I increased pay and therefore turnover went down.
Right.
Really? Did it really happen that way? Did you ask them? Did you ask people why they would have left or why they stuck around? The answer is usually no. And so they
Right.
don't usually have a way of being able to prove that. But they make those statements anyways because they can.
Mhm.
And so that's where I like to coach organizations to take a very methodical scientific approach to using HR data and analytics. First of all, clean the data, make sure it's appropriate, do some testing on the data, do some testings on your hypotheses before you even get into a situation where you're going to make these big brash statements about them. And then to take the scientific method and have it be documented fully. And then if you have those outcomes that you thought were true, make sure you have the numbers, make sure you have a high enough N to make these statements, but then submit all of your data.
Mhm.
Tell people the story and then submit your data so people can go, yeah, okay, I see where you got those correlations from.
Is there like a specific example where that shift in the numbers happened for you? The numbers versus the human context.
Yeah, certainly, and I get it from dealing with hundreds of clients who have thousands of employees, and they look at trends in the analytics and they are trying to scratch their heads and go, why am I losing people? What's happening here?
Mhm.
What is the actual cause of it? And you'll love this, Don. We look at their termination reasons. The
Oh,
termination reasons say, what was the top reason? Resignation.
right. Yeah.
And I
The
say,
the
well, we have to be,
bucket the bucket the
yeah,
bucket go for all blanket crap. Right.
exactly.
Exactly.
And I say to measure anything, you need to get behind that number and get underneath it. And first of all, eliminate the word resignation and actually put in what actually happened. They hated their manager. They
Right.
they got a better job. They got better pay. Things like
Right.
that.
Right.
Oh, we can't do that. No one will ever check the hated my manager box. Okay. Well, then you're never going to really know, will you? And so what happened is that I worked with some organizations and we actually did some exit interview work to talk to the people who've left and to find out what was underlying those turnover numbers. And we did find out it was I hated my manager. They painted me into a box. I could never get out of that box. Or I got looked over for promotion
Right.
and mm, I didn't get an increase for some reason. We had a 3% increase pool and I got no increase and I was a good performer. So all those things are the cause of those terminations.
Right.
You don't have to talk about correlation. That was causation right there.
Right.
And so we were able to then, now that we had that data, go back and look at the termination metrics, the turnover rate, the whatever you want to call it, and be able to set the stories behind it because there are real people behind it. And this is kind of the lost context, especially when we start talking about artificial intelligence in the world of HR. AI doesn't go to that level to be able to look at the context unless you ask it to, unless you tell it to, and you have to make sure it doesn't make it up.
Hmm.
Whereas people have that ability to ask the why, unless you're talking about agentic and you're telling the agent to look behind the why or to ask the question why. And so I think that in my background, the being able to look at a number and say, there's a person there, you have to get that story. That has given me the opportunity to be more challenging, to be more of a detective and a consultant,
Mhm.
and not just take the obvious answer of, well, they left because they probably got a better opportunity.
Right.
That doesn't help anybody.
Right. No, it absolutely doesn't help anybody.
It's like
Uh,
a doctor giving an antibiotic every time somebody comes into their yeah, just take an antibiotic, you'll be fine. Or take penicillin, you'll be good.
there's so many Band-Aids, right? I mean, I could talk about so many Band-Aid stories and situations and incidents that happened throughout my 20-something HR career, and nobody ever really likes to hear the real true reason behind why something is happening.
They
But
fear it'll get
unfortunately.
pointed back at them.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I've been on the receiving end of the why didn't I get promoted and why didn't I
Yeah.
get the salary increase? And but we can
Yeah.
leave that for the first full blown cursing podcast, right? Where we can
Yeah,
all of
definitely.
those talk about all of those examples. So have you ever struggled with trying to get a company to be more open minded or try to find that balance of fairness? Like, have you experienced that with customers?
Absolutely. You have some that say, "I'm not going there." And one story in specific is really horrible, which is we built a pay equity tool that would look at the potential gaps in pay between employees in the same job.
Mm.
And I literally had some chief HR officer say, "Do not turn that on for my company. I don't want to know because if I know, I have to do something about it."
Yeah,
I said,
ignorance
"What?"
is bliss, right.
Yeah,
Amen.
I said in the Equal Pay Act, there is no ostrich argument. You
Right,
can't put your head in the sand and
right,
say, "I don't know, so I didn't have to do anything about it." That's
right,
not the way the law works.
right.
And so whenever I heard that, I said, "Wow, you're in the wrong job." I literally had said that to people. And I'm not going to point fingers. I'm never going to say who these people are. But if you're in charge of a precious resource like your employees
Mhm.
and you don't care that you might be underpaying a population of people, let's just call it out, like whether it's racially based or whether it's ethnicity based or whether it's gender based or whether it's gender identity based, and you don't want to know that you're underpaying, systemically underpaying a group, you're in the wrong job.
Right.
So yeah, so I've faced that, and I'm not working with those people anymore. So
Well, I was just gonna ask you, like, what did you do? Were there some that you were able to convince and sort of push the needle, or was it just like, "Yeah, you know what? I can't work with you."
well, when I hear that, I can't work with them because they don't want to hear. They don't want to hear that
Right,
it may not be as bad as you think, and they
right,
don't want to hear that these tools are for you and your general counsel. So it's never going to see the light of day if you do it the right way. And there's a need to understanding this issue. I mean, I took it really personally. I have kids, and I have kids who are gender fluid, and I don't want them to ever face a pay inequity because of who they are or how they identify themselves.
okay.
And we had this one advertisement that myself and my friend Kimber Fox from ADP did. I love her, and I love this ad that they made called "Someday Today," and it makes me cry every time I even think about it because it first shows a whole bunch of different people, and then it says, "At ADP, we created a new way of being able to understand whether or not people are being paid fairly for who they are. Every time I would emote going back to my kids and thinking, my kids could get underpaid and this tool can help them never
Wow.
get underpaid. Anyway, so I'm very passionate about it and I care about it. And so pay equity is one of those things that always gets me. So yeah, I've had the blessing to be working with some clients who get it and who want it and who understand it. I have changed some people's minds, but there
Hmm.
are others who you just can't. And it's because of the culture of the organization they work for and you can't change them.
Right, right. Where do you see trends going? Where do you see data analytics going forward?
I think it has to be used as a mainstream tool to everything that people do in the world of human resources. My hope is that data gets democratized, like you and I have been fighting for since we were babies in this space, so that everybody understands the data that they have access to and the data they don't have access to, and they're smart enough, or at least they're trained enough to understand how to ask for the right things, as well as how to ask for things that they didn't get. And as people study and as people get more used to the tools that are going to be developed as part of the next generation of HR technology, analytics is baked into everything so that when someone's considering making a decision in the world of HR, they're looking at it from the perspective of how will this affect the people around me and how do I know? What evidence do I have? And
Mm,
with that, you get the analytics that go alongside that. That's my hope because with the new technologies and with artificial intelligence, you have the opportunity to ask questions. You have the ability,
right.
especially if you know how to build a prompt the right way. How effective will this change be in making to this person, to their career, to their lives? And what kind of knock on effects does it have for other people? Asking a prompt like that, and them being able to get back statistics that say, when a change like this is made, 62% of the time it's adopted fairly and okay. But the other things you need to consider are the compression from how people are paid above them and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
That's what I would want is that the person who's the consumer of this information gets so good at not only writing the right prompts, but also understanding the process that they're doing that they can consume the story that they're trying to tell and that they're trying to affect a change in. So they're making the right change.
So, what's one metric that you would like to see companies adopt?
Wow. There are a million metrics that I'd like companies to adopt, but I think the most important one is around pay equity, is around looking at pay fairly and looking at the gender wage gap and the race and ethnicity wage gap. Because to me, there's no more emergency in HR right now than paying two people who have equal
Right.
responsibility and who have
Differently.
equal. Yeah, I mean, it's just disgusting. It's just horse crap. And oh, I used a four-letter word. Um, to me, it bothers me to my core that there are differences in pay based on who you are, not
Yeah,
what
I
you
used
know or not the skills you have.
right. I used to love when you asked a question like, "Why didn't I get the pay increase this time?" Or "How come I wasn't looked at for that promotion?" And I used to love the responses that managers, some managers over the course of my lifetime would give, which was blanket, obviously bullshit, right?
Yeah,
Because did they not know that we had access to the data? Did they not know that we
yeah,
saw the inequality? Did they not know, like, and that always used to make me go like this and
yeah,
scratch my head, go, do
yeah.
you not know that I get to see that?" And I'm not saying it in a way where I looked at anything or did
Right,
anything that was above and beyond what I was
right.
supposed to or allowed to. You're looking at the data, you're doing metrics, and then you apply yourself into that program, and then you say, okay, you're trying to convince this portion of the organization to do X, Y, and Z, but yet
Right.
the cobbler's children have no shoes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's always the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was brutal. No,
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, I can go down a rabbit hole, but I won't. If you think numbers could speak, what would they ask us to change?
Wow, that's a good question. I think what they'd ask us is why. Why are you doing that? Why not do this? And the thing I'd ask you back, or the thing I'd probably give as an example is pay transparency has made it much more easy for us to have a trusted relationship between HR and employees and managers. The numbers that we publish in these requisitions and in these advertisements for jobs
Mhm,
now tell a story of who I'm asking for.
mhm.
Whereas before, they could have told you something different than me, Dawn, just because your name was Dawn and mine was David.
Right,
And actually, because I'm a 59-year-old male, they could tell a totally different story than a 25-year-old male or a
right,
25-year-old female.
right,
But now that they're published, the numbers are the numbers. And so I think the numbers would think that they are being treated fairly. But I think that numbers a lot of times would ask the question, why? We're just numbers. Why are you doing this to us? You're blaming us like a 3% increase pool. You're blaming us for a merit increase problem that you're creating by creating a 3% merit increase pool.
right.
So blame the numbers. It's their fault.
Yeah.
Recently, I've advocated for getting rid of merit increases. I know that's heresy,
Okay. All
and I
right.
have a
Tell me
couple of
about
really
it.
cool podcasts on that. Well, giving cost of living or an across the board increase instead, and using incentive pay, yes, incentive pay to everyone because they earned it or because they didn't, they don't get it. And
Mhm.
having clear goals, having clear responsibilities, or having clear outlines as to how do you earn that incentive pay, which is much more than just 3%, by the way. But it gets you out of the trying to rob Peter to pay Paul or robbing Mary because you want to pay Peter and Paul.
Right.
Um, and it gets into a situation where things could be more transparent and fair. So um, I think that the story on this is yet to be written because people are religious around their merit increases. They think, well, wait a minute, it's meritocracy. I have to. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Right.
Meritocracy is not based on a 3% increase pool because I have to lie a lot of times. Well, you just did well this year. You didn't do a great job. And so we're going to give you zero. So we could give, Bob over there, who is my best friend, a 10% increase.
Yeah,
That's
it
crap.
stings. It's
Yeah.
it
Well, and then you
stings.
lose all your good people
Yeah.
who you need to run the organization because, you were playing favorites and that person won. And
Right.
now I have no increase for an entire year,
Right.
even
Right.
though my costs have gone up dramatically in the market.
So so these types of stories and these examples and the conversations that you have with your customer organizations that are part of your, consulting, where do you see your Data Labs podcast going? Like, are you going to stick on the same track of the stories that you tell, or do you see it sort of morphing into something different or bigger?
So the beautiful part about HR Data Labs is it's not about me at all. It's not about my stories. When we have people on our program, it's about them. It's about the guest. The guest tells us what topic they want to talk about.
Right.
They tell us what questions to ask them. And of course, I ask follow up questions
Mhm.
because, as you can tell, I have opinions on things.
A little bit. Yeah.
A little bit, just a little bit. And, but I let it be their story and I let it be their conversation. And I never, ever challenge them unless they say something that I don't agree with. But it's their story, it's their time to tell their
Right.
tale. And
Right.
for a lot of people, it's their first time they've ever done that on a podcast. And so you have to go gently with them because if they get turned off to podcasts, first of all, it's terrible air. It's a terrible podcast episode. But it's just a conversation between two people. Like I'm talking to my great friend Dawn, and
Right.
I'm having a nice time telling my story. And that's what people do on HR Data Labs. They tell their story. I get to know them, I get to know about them, and my listeners do too.
Did you ever try to get somebody on the show who was just, "No, no, 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 I don't wanna do it," and then they finally broke down and came on?
No, actually, I've never had people who've told me no.
I
Um,
mean, for their own reasons, no, not
oh, yeah.
because you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I've never had people tell me no. I've always had people tell me I can't right now. I'd love to, but I can't. And if you've ever listened to, our podcast, one of the fun things about it is that people genuinely have a good time. At the end of it, they're smiling. Now you can't
Right.
tell because it's audio, but they're smiling and they love doing it. And typically at the end, we don't have enough time because we typically will max out at 35 minutes that they say, I would love to come back.
Yeah.
And so, no, I don't chase people because I have so many people who want to come on. And actually, I have a lot of podcast publishing or podcast schedulers who will call me and say, hey, I've got this great person who might be a great fit for your show.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't have to do as much outreach anymore, but I do. I do tons. And the people I have on are my friends most of the time.
Yeah, well,
And I think the first 100 episodes were all my friends. And it was wonderful.
yeah, look, that's how this started for me, having the bakery and having that community was really, obviously a very different experience, but it was a community none the same,
Yes.
and, and then this became a community in a different sense, and, of course, I reached out to friends. I mean, hello, like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you wanna
Exactly.
have your friends on?
Yeah.
And I
Memories.
will say I'm very blessed in knowing a
Yes.
really good diverse mix of people
That's because people love
from
you, Dawn. Yeah.
Aw, thanks,
No,
David.
seriously.
Thank you. I appreciate
If
that.
if I ever tell anybody I'd be talking to Dawn, they'd be like, "Oh my god, I love Dawn."
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I'll state it again, there's a reason why you stay in touch with people, right?
Mhm.
Because they get it. They get it, and I'm not
Yeah,
saying that I only reach out and I only speak to people who get it, but, look, when you create your community and people within your
right.
scope of awareness, it's gonna be people who get it. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, but anyway, I wanna ask you the same question that I ask all my guests, and this is how we end the show. So, I believe that the stories we leave behind say so much about how we showed up in the world. So, David, what's one story, big or small, that you hope people remember you for?
I hope people remember me that I tried to leave the world a better place, understanding some of the stories that don't get told from the voices that don't get heard, and that HR is looked at as a important part of a business. It's not just personnel, and it's not just the HR department where I can complain and kvetch about things that I don't like.
Right.
HR is much more than that, especially during the pandemic. HR held organizations together when they could have seemingly fallen apart, small business, big business. So hopefully at the end of the day, people look back at HR Data Labs, the doodles, and the work that I've done in this world, and they say, David tried to show HR in a different light.
Well, that is just the most beautiful way that you could have summarized everything. Thank you for that.
That's
Really.
my epitaph. Hopefully that'll be on my headstone at some
Okay,
point.
so I'll make sure that we save that, and I'll give you the transcript of that so you could save
Yeah,
it.
that would
But
be lovely. Thank you so much. Send it to my lawyer.
no, but seriously, thank you, David. Thank you
My
for
pleasure.
sharing everything that you shared with me today, and thank you for being part of the story. And I want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode of Dawn of a Story. If you heard something that moved you, made you laugh, or made you think, please share it with someone you love. Please like and subscribe to the show. And if you're feeling brave, I'd love to hear your story by commenting below. It helps other story lovers find us too. Please check out David's podcast. If you want to reach out and get in touch with him, you can get him through HR Data Labs. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. hrdatalabs.com. It's all the links to everything that we talked about today, including his fabulous podcast. Until next time, keep listening, keep sharing, and keep telling your story. Thank you, David. Thank you, my
Thank you, Dawn.
friend. I really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
Thank you.